Jerry came to us basically as sort of an emergency phone call. I still remember the day pretty vividly, getting a call from a number of people who knew him and knew about us. And I think he was in Columbia, Missouri. I don't remember where he came from, but he was very sick. And he was in a condition that we call cardiogenic shock, which basically just means the heart is failing so badly that all of the other organs in the body are at risk of also failing. And the mechanism of his cardiogenic shock was thought to be due to an acute coronary syndrome or a heart attack. And so he had a complication of that. And so when we got the call, one of the concerns was that his heart wasn't going to be recoverable and that he would ultimately need a mechanical device implanted like an LVAD or a left ventricular assist device, or ultimately a heart transplant. When he showed up, it was about 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and we knew he was coming, so we had about an hour and a half to prepare our team. And we had a surgeon, an interventional cardiologist, and myself essentially ready when he showed up in our ICU, because at that time he was already on a mechanical ventilator and had a device called an intra-aortic balloon pump that was placed. And we had to decide what we were going to offer and how we were going to do it. And so it was a true heart team discussion, a true multidisciplinary discussion, which allowed us to bring kind of the best minds for each domain involved in his care to come together and come up with the best plan for him and his family. So it was basically a multi-pronged, stepwise plan. The first step was to get him out of shock and rescue him from that. And that involved having Dr. Tadros insert a device called an impella, which is basically like a vacuum cleaner to be inserted into the left ventricle, the main pumping chamber. It pulls blood out of the heart like a vacuum cleaner and then dumps the blood on the other side of the aortic valve, which separates the heart from the body and allows the heart to rest from its injury as a result of the heart attack. That allowed him to be more stable and to get through the other procedure that was coupled to this, which is basically implanting a stent in the front artery of the heart, called the left anterior descending artery. And what's different about this is oftentimes people will deploy stents for patients having a heart attack, but it's much harder to do in a patient who's dying actively. And so the pump allowed him to get through the procedure and recover, and the stent allowed him to actually get blood flow going back into his heart again. And the other piece of this is once you get blood flow returned back to the heart, you allow the heart to recover, and the pump was left in for about 2 to 4 days. I can't remember exactly how long it was left in, but he did really well once he got blood flow back to the heart through the stent. And then it's tying that with good medicines. And one of the medicines we used for him was a novel therapy that's marketed under the trade name Entresto, also known as sacubitril valsartan, but it's a new therapy that only was approved by the FDA in 2015 for patients with heart failure. And at the time that he received this, it was sort of early in the stage of us using it. We were one of the early adopters for this therapy. I use it quite regularly now. It's now been endorsed by the American Heart Association and has made it part of the routine practice and guidelines. And so tying the device therapy to the medical therapy was very instrumental in his overall care and allowed him to actually leave the ICU and leave the hospital and be on the path to recovery. He was actively dying when we inherited him on a Friday at 3 o'clock. And ultimately, he had to get through that initial event. I like to say to my transplant candidates, you know, you have to be a short-term survivor to be a long-term survivor. And the reality is he had to get through those first few days and get to a stable position. And had he not recovered completely, that's absolutely right, is that we would be talking more about heart transplant or things like that. There's a lot of reasons why he may or may not have been a good candidate for that, but we never had to even go there because his heart got better. So today he continues to do well. He ultimately needed a couple other upgrades to his medicines. He also underwent a special type of pacemaker called resynchronization therapy, which ultimately he needed a couple months. And because of all of that, his heart is steadily getting stronger every day. But more importantly, he's very high functioning, as you will see, and he's able to do life pretty much with almost no restrictions. And I think considering where he was when we met him to where he is today, this is an overwhelming success on the part of the team. And I think that's the beauty of the story is he received care from multiple people. And while I'm one of his physicians, sort of in charge of coordinating his care, there are multiple expertise skill sets that were brought to bear to help him. And really it's about the heart team approach, which I think makes our particular program unique.
Well, I just couldn't breathe. And I knew that I was in trouble, so I was down on the floor, but I got to the phone to call the front desk. And I was also able to call a friend that I had there. He and I had come over to the meeting and to contact him. He was in another meeting, but the next thing I knew, I was at KU. After Dr. Sauer got involved, he felt like he could have it done with stents. And they called in the stent man, and bingo. The next thing I did, I woke up a few days later and all repaired. Well, number one, it keeps your heart in correct rhythm. And the other one gives you a jolt. The defibrillator gives you a jolt in case you would have a heart failure. And now they have it in all one case. And they just, Dr. Berenbaum put that in. And you never know it's there. And it has done its job. But I'm on this Entresto, which is Dr. Sauer calls it his miracle drug, and we're working with him on that, and that has helped us. And I go back in April, and they will do an electrical cardiogram to see how my heart has healed or is healing, because it will be a year in March. I feel great. I really do. Each day it seems like I feel a little better. I'm not 100% yet in my strength, but I do have a high strength level. I work most days. Some days I work all day. If I get tired, they tell me just take a little nap, and I like naps. But I do feel very good. And Sauer has told me that I had about 10 minutes left before I got to the hospital. So I feel that my time was not then. God had other things for me to do. And I'm very, very attentive to that. And it's been a real blessing. And I do have a big joy in my heart about the fact of being at KU and also being cared for by KU people who really make me feel special. And I think that's one of the great things about the hospital, that you're just not a patient, you're somebody special, and they want you to have a great life, they want you to have a great lifestyle, and they want you to live a long time if that's the Lord's will. And I feel special in that area. I love it so much better since it's not painted, see, or epoxied or something. And I mean,
Right, so he has one in the LV, and then he has one in the IV, and then he has an atrial lead that paces him atrium, and then he's got his generator.
So that's a whole kit. That's a monitor that all the St. Jude patients get that sits by their bed.
Okay, so that's his bedside unit.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot, yeah. Because I mean, it catches so many things with that home monitoring system as opposed to only being able to check them in-house.
Yeah, you know, every
And it's crazy the amount of things.
So it's a whole team.
Yeah.